This is the picture of a glamorous, successful moment. This is the moment when, after decades honing my craft as an actor, after recording 500 audiobooks, after innovating ways to stay at the forefront of leadership and craft in a multi-billion-dollar, rapidly expanding, growing industry, I had this amazing success. In May of last year, I won the audiobook industry's one of the highest awards in the audiobook industry. I won Best Female Narrator. I had set a career goal that at least once in my work as an actor behind the mic, I wanted to at least be nominated for one of the most prestigious awards in the industry, and that night, I achieved well more than my goal. I hadn't just been nominated, I won, and I beat Emma Thompson. Thank you. Success is what we all aspire to. And external markers of success are what many of us count as the primary gauge of whether or not we've been successful. And we believe that if or when we are successful, it will change us, it will change our life, it will make us different, it will make our lives different, it will give us peace and rest because we will have achieved something essential that we need. And there's nothing wrong with external markers of success. I'm proud of this award. I'm really pleased that I won. It was an honor and it means something to me. And it means something to me in my career because it gives me entree to the next level of my work. It connects me to people with whom I will collaborate and make new innovative projects. So it definitely changed my career, and I'm glad that it happened. But did this award change me? No. That moment of hearing my name called did not change me. That moment had happened well before. Let me give you a little bit of history, which will bring us up to what was actually the most important and significant moment of my life. I was born with deformed feet. And if you look at me, you would have no idea. I look perfectly normal, perfectly unaffected. But at 7 months old, before I had ever taken my first steps, I had my first major surgery. Elementary school, junior high, high school, college, and beyond, I had surgery after surgery. So by the time I was in my late 20s, I'd had over a dozen major corrective foot surgeries, and I have known pain all my life. Whenever somebody would hear that story, they would ask me, how did that affect you? What did that do to you? And I would say, that did nothing. It had no effect on me. It was temporary. It was physical. Once I had healed, I moved on. It had no impact. And that was a story that I completely bought into. I totally believed myself. And for 3 decades, I told everyone this story. It was a great story. When I was 30 in 2008, I suddenly experienced the most excruciating, debilitating, limiting pain of my life. And it's hard to imagine that after all of that suffering, it could get even worse. I'd learned to live in my body in a particular way. I had learned to live with myself in layers, split. I'd learned to inhabit part of the space in myself, but not all of myself. And this was how I protected myself from the pain. I thought that if I released into it, it would end me. There was so much that I held at bay. So I learned to live from the neck up. I allowed denial and resistance and fighting and lying to myself and to others to take up all of the space inside me so that I didn't have to feel everything. And I did this so well. I was so good at it. This was invisible to other people, and it was totally unconscious to myself. I had no idea that that was the tactic that I had learned to cope with all of this pain and all of this anguish. But that was my tool, and it served me so well. But in 2008, suddenly and unexpectedly, for no apparent reason, my body had become so dysfunctional, so stressed, partly because of the pain and the surgeries, and partly because of all of the effort of that denial, resistance, fighting. My body had had enough, and it just broke. So in a sudden moment, no warning, a cervical disc herniated, pinched a nerve, and my body exploded in pain. Pain erupted in my back, in my neck, shot down my arm, into my hand, into my fingers. And I went from being a young professional actor recording books during the day and doing professional theater at night to not being able to turn my head, lift my arms, walk down the stairs without sobbing. This is a picture of what I saw out my bedroom window. I lay in bed for months, propped on pillows, breathing shallowly as not to feel everything. I did what I could to heal. I walked a block to the local swimming pool and walked in the water 3 times a week, tears running down my face. I walked beyond that to the Buddhist meditation center and sat on a chair in excruciating pain and meditated, tears running down my face. I very gingerly, with great trepidation, drove to physical therapy, tears running down my face. But I was so angry. I was furious because I had done my work, which was to ignore, resist, deny, fight, lie to myself. I had done what it took to escape, and all of a sudden, I was in my worst nightmare. My body was completely out of my control, and the pain that I was experiencing far surpassed anything that I had been through before, which was extraordinary. I had told myself all those years, none of this means anything. Surgeries didn't mean anything. The screws and pins embedded in my feet didn't mean anything. The stitches and the needles and the scars, the isolation, the loneliness, the inability to play, to connect with people my age, have a normal life. The casts and the crutches and the walkers and the wheelchairs, all of that didn't mean anything, and I thought that was my work. So this was disconnected from anything logical. This pain wasn't the result of a surgery, and yet it was totally, completely consuming me and overwhelming me, and I was so angry. And I lay in this bed as winter turned to spring, and I looked out the window, and slowly, I had this dawning awareness that I had been living in layers. I became aware of this split in myself. I suddenly became aware that I had not allowed myself to fully experience my body, that I had been living from the neck up for 3 decades. I could feel myself holding back, not fully inhabiting my body, not taking up all of the space in myself. I just had no idea. It was a revelation. But at 30, all that I had denied and held at bay came back with such unrelenting ferocity, screaming at me, "Wake up. You have to be present in this," that I could no longer ignore myself. So what was that moment that actually changed me? It was the moment that I surrendered. I had been losing everything. I knew that my marriage was over. I thought that my career was over, which had just begun. I couldn't speak at that time without crying in grief, rage, anguish, torment. I thought I'd even lost my voice. And I was so tired. I was so exhausted, keeping that pain at bay, holding it away from me, not allowing myself to experience it or to be honest about it, that I was exhausted. I could not do it anymore. So even though everything was falling away and the old tools didn't work for me, they were no longer protecting me or taking care of me, I didn't know what else to do, so I surrendered. Surrender for me was a very physical experience. I remember the moment that I sank into myself. I sank into my body, and the layers disappeared. And all of a sudden, I was fully present for the first time in my life. And it was awful. It was excruciating and sickening and heartbreaking, and I was terrified. And it wasn't as painful as it had been the moment before I woke up and became present. It was not as painful as all of that, plus the resistance, plus the fighting. So I learned in this moment of surrender that important lesson, that life-changing lesson. Acceptance is less painful than resistance. Some of the losses were permanent. Did I suddenly start getting better? Yes, I did. That moment of surrender began my healing process. I realized that there were things that I would never regain. I could not swing a broadsword on stage in a Shakespeare play, but I could go out into the backyard and discover moments of simple beauty that were majestic to me. I could make a new kind of art that was so precious to me. I could find new hope, new perspective. So even though this awakening came from a narrowing, a closing in of my focus, and I lost things that I would never regain, I did realize that I was ending with new perspective, ending with more than I had lost, because I suddenly had myself completely. And it was a relief to realize that my thoughts are in my control. My body may not be in my control, but I can choose what stories I tell myself, and I can be real, and I can be present, and I can be honest, and I can get better. So did this awakening and awareness solve everything? It would be nice if I could say, and then everything changed. But that's not true. My body is my body. There are times when I experience enormous pain still and always will. And that's discouraging sometimes and frustrating and hard, but it is not as hard as fighting against myself and being at war with myself every step of the way was. I wonder what it is that you are resisting. I wonder what it is that you're fighting against. What are you holding back? What do you want to ignore? What do you want to deny? Because we've all got something. And whatever our source of pain and whatever our degree of pain, it's not in proportion to somebody else's, it's our own. Our pain is extraordinary in ourselves. I suspect that if you have the courage to release, to surrender, you may find new perspective. You may find that you suddenly have so much more space to live in. There may be new loves that you find, new things that come to you that fill your void, fill that space that you have been trying to ignore. I hope that that's true, and I think that that's true. I've never told this story, and it's hard to tell this story, but it's so important to me that my work now is to imperfectly take care of this shoulder, this neck, this back, these feet, to take as good of care of myself as I possibly can, and to remember this lesson and remind myself of it again and again so that I don't slip back into those old familiar habits of resisting, denying, fighting. My work now is to stay present, stay honest, and then hopefully share this with others. I hope that it means something to you as it has meant to me, and I appreciate being here with you. Thank you.